Welcome back to this info session on the cluster 2. So we're about now to start the last session of the day. It has been already a very informative day. The last session is on the tips and tricks for you when you start your application. My name is Christine Van Gooy, and I am the head of the unit Inclusive Society in the European Research Executive Agency. Our service is responsible for the implementation of the projects of Cluster 2. I'm here today with my colleagues Cécile Menetre, Agnes Echeverine, and Cristina Marcuzzo. We will later on walk you through many tips and tricks which will be very helpful for your proposals. Now at REA, our mission is to select and to fund the best research proposals. In doing so, we work hand in hand with our colleagues that you saw this morning, colleagues of DG Research and Innovation, colleagues of Education and Culture, and also colleagues of DG Employment. So before we start our presentation, I would also like to invite you, the same system as you had this morning. If you have questions, please do use the Slido. It's already open. I think it's also on the screen how to do it, and you should know it by now. After the presentation, we will have plenty of time to answer your questions. So I would now like to pass on the floor to Cécile, please.
Thank you, Christine. So, hello everyone, my name is Cécile Menetre, and I am one of the call coordinators for Cluster 2 at REA C1 unit. I'm just going to run you through a few key aspects of our evaluation linked to Cluster 2. Next slide, please. And again. There are 4 key principles related to our evaluation process. First of all, we apply a fair and equal treatment of all proposers. This is why there is for instance, only one deadline beyond which you cannot add any information to your proposals. We also have the same format for all proposals, so you will see this in the templates that we use, is to make sure that everybody uses the same format and provides the same information in their proposals. Then the second principle is that we use 3 evaluation criteria that I will be coming back on and explain on later in this presentation. We also apply very strict confidential policy when it comes to working with our experts. So embedded in their contract, there is a confidentiality clause that they are meant to respect. Of course, this also applies to our staff. So our experts are not allowed to disclose any information on individual proposals or on the experts who have evaluated them. We also pay very close attention to conflicts of interests. Finally, we use independent external experts, so they can be from any walk of life, research entities, universities, public bodies, private bodies, and so on. And they can be of any nationality. In evaluating proposals, we try also to respect a geographical balance and not to have experts of the same nationality evaluate one single proposal, so that we avoid the risk of geographical bias. Next slide, please. Let me walk you through the timeline for our next call. So we have a deadline on the 14th of March. We will be running the evaluation in the second quarter of 2023. So this will be first a scientific evaluation and then an ethics evaluation in the third quarter of 2023. And my colleague Cristina will come back on the ethics aspects a little later. We intend to inform the applicants, usually by rule, it's 5 months after the call deadline. After this, once the proposers and the successful applicants have been informed, we launch what we call the grant agreement preparation, which will take place during the third and the fourth quarter of 2023. And we're looking to have a grant agreement signature at the end of the fourth quarter of 2023. Next slide, please. When you are designing your proposal, I would invite you to first have a look at key documents that are available all on the Funding and Tenders portal, and we have also embedded links in this slide, which I think will be made public or has already been made public. The key document, of course, is the Horizon Europe Cluster 2 work program, which defines the policy background for our topics, gives the topic descriptions for each, and also an overview of the budgets for each topic. There are also the general annexes to the work program, where you will find a list of eligible countries, some rules on eligibility and admissibility conditions, a description of the award criteria, and some rules also on the scoring and thresholds to be obtained. I would also encourage you to first also look at the submission forms and the templates that are available on the Funding and Tenders portal. They are essential and will guide you to prepare your proposal. Now, in each of these templates, you will find some guidance that is embedded in the templates themselves. This is, it should not be seen as a constraint. It really is meant to guide you and to make sure that you cover all the aspects which will be assessed by the experts during the evaluation. And finally, have a look as well as the Horizon Europe Program Guide, which provides the background to our calls and our topics. Next slide, please. There are a few key principles that you should respect when you're designing your proposals. First of all, make sure that the scope of your proposal falls within the topic. And here I would encourage you not to recycle old proposals that you have submitted previously to previous topics in previous years, simply because they may not be tailored anymore to the topics for this year. As you know, we change the topics every year. So make sure that you respect the scope and that your proposal falls within the topics of this year. You'll also need to demonstrate that your idea is ambitious and that you go beyond the state of the art. Is your proposal interdisciplinary? Do you adequately cover the gender dimension and the open science practices? And also pay attention to the impacts. What is the intended impact of your proposal? How do you intend to maximize this impact? What are the dissemination and exploitation activities that you foresee for your project? Finally, have a look as well, pay particular attention to your work plan. Explain between the beneficiaries who will do what are the resources that you foresee for each. This will help also the experts to assess what you intend to do, and also show how the participants would each, what they would each bring to your proposal. Next slide, please. There are a number of concepts that you should also bear in mind when you're designing your proposals. These are standard across Horizon Europe calls, but do have a look before you start designing and thinking of your proposal. Have a look at the European Program Guide, which describes these considerations, and really bear them in mind when you're preparing your proposal. There are also specific requirements for each topic, so do also have a look very closely at the work program for Cluster 2. But these 5 considerations that are listed here on the slide are really to be taken into account when you draft your proposal. Next slide, please. There are 3 award criteria against which your proposals will be assessed. First is excellence, then impact, and finally implementation. Each criterion is subdivided into a set of sub-criteria which depend on the type of action foreseen for each topic. So do have a look on the Funding and Tenders portal at the topics page, which will give you an idea of the type of action foreseen for your topic. Each award criterion refers to a specific section of the proposal, and these sections in the proposal mirror the evaluation form that the experts will be using. So it's really meant to guide the experts in finding the appropriate information in your proposal. Next slide, please. In the standard action grant, so an actual cost grant, there are 2 parts. In part A, which consists of web-based forms, which are generated in the Funding and Tenders portal by the IT submission system. And this is meant to contain information on all the participants. So not just the entities, but also the people who will be involved in the project itself. This is generated automatically once you have submitted the information via the IT system. Then part B is the narrative part. So this is where you explain what the project will be about. It follows the 3 sections that I mentioned earlier, so excellence, impact, and implementation. And this part needs to be uploaded as a PDF document, following the templates that I mentioned earlier, which can be downloaded by you in the submission system. There is a strict page limit that is applied, so please do bear this in mind when you draft your proposals. For CSAs, the maximum is 30 pages, and for RIAs and IAs, so research and innovation actions, it's 45 pages. Do bear in mind that if you go beyond, you can upload a PDF, so you can include as many pages as you want, but if you go beyond this page limit, make sure, just bear in mind that the additional excess pages will be blanked, so they will not be made available to the experts. Next slide, please. For lump sum topics, there are, this is slightly different. There are 2 main things to bear in mind. First of all, the page limit is slightly higher than for actual cost proposals. So for CSAs, we're looking at 33 pages, and for RIAs, we're looking at 50 pages. And also for lump sum proposals, there is an additional Excel annex, which is our detailed budget table, in which you are asked to detail the budget that is foreseen for each participant and for each work package. We do also ask you to make sure that there is a consistency of budget totals between what you indicate in Part A in your budget table and what is indicated in the detailed budget table that you will upload as an Excel annex, and also the data that you provide in Part B. Make sure that all of this is consistent. Next slide, please. In terms of consortium composition, there are some minimum eligibility criteria that you have to take into account. So for research and innovation actions we are looking to include at least 1 independent legal entity established in a member state and at least 2 other independent legal entities, each established in different member states or associated countries. And for coordination and support actions, CSAs, these can be submitted by 1 or more legal entities, which may be established in a member state, associated country, or sometimes, if provided for in the specific call conditions, in another 3rd country. Now, these are the minimum requirements, but there is no maximum to the number of participants that you can include. We sometimes have proposals with 10, 20, even 30 applicants. Participants, sorry. If you do decide to have a large consortium, make sure that it makes sense to include all these participants, and also that it is manageable and feasible. This is all for my slides. Now Agnes will present a few tips also on the application.
For you to keep in mind. So mainly the coordinator will need to act in the system when it comes to the proposal preparation. But as participant, you also have some tasks before this can be done. You need to prepare your PIC number, the identifier of each organization. You need to register for that in the portal. And also if there are researchers participating in the project, then you need to ask your researchers to provide their identifiers to you or to the coordinators. So normally it's the coordinator who starts to draft the proposal in the system, and then it's the task of the coordinator to invite other participants by adding email addresses of the other contact points and adding PIC numbers of the participants. In the system, the coordinator can edit all sections, while the participants can edit only their sections. What does it mean? It means that when it comes to the participants' data, each participant can fill in their sections, but the coordinator can fill in any other section, including the participant section as well in the proposal. It's only the coordinator and their contacts who can submit the proposal, including also upload the part B, which is the main part, the narrative section of the proposal. It's very important that you start preparing your proposal in time, because especially preparing the Part A in a structured format in the system, it takes quite some time. The reason is that you cannot edit the forms at the same time, so you need to take turns, and if the consortium is big, then you need to split up the time and the work in between yourself. A very frequent mistake is that participants do not fill in all the participant-related information. So it's not only the legal information, but we also have in Horizon Europe a list of researchers participating in the action, also the experience of the participants, the role, the publications, and previous project relations can also be filled in the Part A form now, as opposed to Horizon 2020, where it was all added in the Part B section. So please make sure that you fill in especially this section, because it will be an important part of the evaluation later on. And then it's also good to keep in mind that you can submit the first version as early as possible. So once you have filled in all the mandatory details, you can have the first submission, and then you can submit other variations later on. And we always advise to avoid submitting in a last day, especially because if there are technical issues, unfortunately the deadline cannot be prolonged unless there are really major technical issues that are relevant for everyone. But this is really rare. So please keep in mind the submission system will show you the exact time, which is usually 5 o'clock in the afternoon, Central European time, and then the deadline is there. Next slide, please. So this is just a screenshot of the submission system where the coordinator starts to add all the participants. On the left-hand side of the slide, you can see the download Part B templates. This includes also the Excel template, which is necessary for the lump sum funding proposals. You do not need to prepare a draft proposal to be able to obtain this template from the submission system. So actually, if you go to the topic of your selected topic, you select the type of action, then you will enter the submission system, and from there you can download the templates, all the templates that are relevant for a given topic. And then also on the left-hand side, you can see some basic call-related details. What is important to keep in mind is here you will see the type of model grant agreement. So if it is lump sum, here you will see it clearly that it's a lump sum model grant agreement which is relevant for a given topic. And then the Excel template, the detailed budget table will be also mandatory in the system. At the top of the screen, you can see some basic eligibility warnings. These remind coordinators if the minimum number of participants are already in the system or not. But this is just the minimum number. It's a very standard reminder. So if there are specificities of the topic, please look into the topic conditions. There are specific type of participants, especially in Horizon Europe. These are new to those who have not been participating yet. The affiliated entities previously were called linked third parties in the system. They also have to be added with a PIC number and a contact person. For the associated partners, this is something new. Those are the associated partners who do not obtain, who do not claim an EU contribution from the project. And they cannot fill in the budget table, therefore, and they also do not add contact people to the associated partner. On the other hand, both types of entities, both the affiliated entity and the associated partner, will have Part A related information in the participants section in the Part A, and they will have to fill in all this information, list the researchers, what is the role of the entity, and all the other details. So it's important to keep in mind it still needs to be done. Maybe the best way to do it, to look at whether you have prepared fully your proposal is to click on the Validate button, and then all the missing information will be listed. Or you can also look at the printed version of the proposal, and then again you can make a check whether everything is filled in. There are plenty of guidelines available from the submission system. I would probably use best the IT how-to if I could advise something. So if you are new to this system, please click on the green button, the IT how-to. Next slide, please. Now there are a list of other tips we usually mention. I would say the completeness I have mentioned already. Again, starting in time gives, if you start in time, usually you get a better quality. You make sure that all sections are filled in, which are really necessary for a good evaluation result. Sometimes there are just very tiny differences between the individual proposals, and then a small detail can make a big difference. And be clear. Please write in clear, short sentences, because the evaluators have really just a short time to assess your proposals. And I would also say if you can use graphs or similar charts which help them understand your project structure, that also helps. For the consortium, I also mentioned, please look at the type of action to know what is the minimum eligibility requirement. And other than that, the topic conditions are also relevant. The page limit is very strict, so we have just one annex normally. It is the part B, except for the lump sum proposals where there's also a detailed annex for the budget. And the next slide, please. Thank you. Related to the partner search, there are different possibilities offered on the portal, on the Funding and Tenders portal. One is that you can always see on the topic page. It's called Partner Search Announcements. Anyone who has either a LEAR or an account administrator role will be able to publish, or if you have prepared your person profile in the portal, you can also publish your own partner searches. If you do not have these specific roles in the portal, you can still look at the published partner searches, which are always relevant for a given topic. And these announcements are only available when the topic opens, and they are simply deleted once the call closes. The other possibility is to look at the how to participate section. We have a partner search page where you can enter different keywords, select by country, by type of entity, and then you can also form your consortium based on that. And tomorrow we have a brokerage event organized by the national contact points and the Net for Society project especially. And you can also visit the brokerage event. It's an online event still available, and you can take a look who are the possible participants in the next topics. Next slide, please. I will have to speed up. For the national contact points, they were mentioned several times. You can also find a complete list per country and per type of national contact point in the Funding and Tenders portal. So if you go under the support, please select Horizon Europe as a program, and then you will have access to the national contact point list. Next slide, please. They will perform additional help. Actually, they are usually, they offer a pre-proposal check and national information days. They have additional, very detailed information on the financing part. So I would advise to contact your national contact points if you need more information or more details about the proposal preparation or partner search related information. Next slide, please. And just a reminder that we are continuously looking at new experts, and expertise is needed for all of our topics. And as we are looking at external experts, independent experts for all of our topics for the evaluations, please go and register if you think that you have the relevant expertise for us. And your registration is also relevant for all of the other EU programs that are using the portal. Next one, please. And this is just a list of links that you can find directly here in the presentation. But what I would consider very useful is, as a teaser, you can find short videos related to some of the aspects of the evaluation process. These are under the support section of the portal. And there are plenty of webinars related to some of the aspects of the evaluation. And those who are not yet familiar with the different horizontal aspects that can be relevant even for the excellence part of the proposal, I would advise you to take a look at these previous webinars. Thank you. Next one, please. And I will give the floor to my colleague Christina, who will talk about the ethics now.
Thank you very much, Agnes. So in this last and final part of this presentation, I will give you some more information about ethics compliance in Cluster 2, with a particular focus on the application process and what you should do at this stage. So next and next again. As you may have seen, the application form in Part A contains a section that is devoted to ethics. It's section 4. It's a mandatory section to fill in, and it's structured into two parts. The first part is the ethics issues table that you see there on the slide. In this table, you're requested to say whether yes or no a certain ethics issue applies to your proposal. If it does, so if the answer is yes, you should also provide in the column that is there to the right the page number of the application where the issue is explained in greater detail. Can be either part A or part B. So to help you fill in this document and also the self-assessment that we will see in a minute, there is a very useful guidance document that it's called How to Fill in Your Ethics Self-Assessment. The title is quite self-explanatory, and the document really takes you through the different issues and also the sub-questions you find there, and it should really help you to see, to identify what are the ethics implications of your research. By way of examples, a couple of issues that apply to almost all the projects we manage in Cluster 2. The first one is definitely human participants, because you're very likely to have to involve humans, like groups of citizens or experts at some point in your research, either via interviews or ethnographic fieldwork or surveys. So in such cases, the answer to that question should be definitely yes. Another issue we see in the majority of the proposals and projects is data protection, because again, at some point during a 3-4 year project, you're very likely to have to process some personal data, and in some cases even at a quite large scale. So data protection is another issue that you should be paying particular attention to. And then other issues may apply as well, for instance, artificial intelligence, if you're using or developing an AI system, or non-EU countries in case you're going to carry out activities outside of the EU. Next, please. The second part of section 4 is called ethics self-assessment. And if you've answered yes to any of the questions in the table above, you should also fill in these two text boxes and provide the information requested. In the first box, you should be providing a bit more detail as to how the issue applies to your research. In the second box, you should explain how you are going to ensure ethics compliance given the issues. So respect of key ethics principles and also legislation, as for instance in the case of data protection legislation. To be noted is that a character limit applies to these subsection of 5,000 per box, and no annexes are allowed. So you should try to be concise, but at the same time really show us that you are aware of the ethical implications of what you're doing. Next, please. And here we put together a list of tips or key points that we invite you to consider. The first one, I said it already, is that the Section 4 is a mandatory part of the application. So you should try to fill it in as correctly and exhaustively as possible, because this may actually have an impact on your grant. You may know that after the scientific evaluation, the proposals that are retained for funding also go through an ethics evaluation to make sure that they are ethics ready, so ready to be funded. So of course, if these two sections are subsections are unclear, this may lead to perhaps having extra deliverables, ethics deliverable added during this evaluation, or perhaps an advisor or a board. So it may actually have an impact on your grant. Then I mentioned Part A, but of course ethics relevant information may be added also to other parts of the application, for instance in Part B, where you discuss the methodology or the work package tables or data and so on. A third point to consider is that ensuring ethics compliance can of course also give rise to costs, and these costs may be eligible if they comply also with all other eligibility conditions, and you may charge them to the work package, either to the work package that generates the ethics activity, or to the management work package, which is probably the most common solution. In such cases, an ethics compliance task could also be added to that WUPI where ethics is encoded or embedded. Finally, in case you in your consortium have colleagues with ethics expertise and background, please do flag that in the application, for instance in the ethics self-assessment, because it's useful for us to know. And also, if you're considering to, already at the application stage, to have an advisor, an ethics advisor or a board, please also do flag that it's important to know. And I leave you with this. There is a next slide on some useful reading. The first document is really the key one. And of course, if you have other questions, happy to answer later. And I give the floor back to Christine.
Thank you. Thank you. That was really a very dense presentation with plenty of tips, and very good that this is recorded. I'm sure that while you were going to prepare your proposals, you will have a look again at those. So now we can open the question and answer session. I see in Slido already many questions are coming up. We will answer as much as possible in the next 20 minutes or so. Now, for questions that we cannot answer or we don't have the time, we will publish the question and the answer on the event page. Should in the next days, should you have more questions, do not hesitate to contact your NCPs. Or send the questions to the research inquiry service, and you will also get the answer. So let us now start with the first question, which I read. It seems to be a popular one. Is a research and innovation NGO allowed to be the coordinator of a consortium? Maybe Agnes, is that a question for you?
Yes, sure. So yes, an NGO is also allowed to be the coordinator of the consortium. Usually there's no restriction on the legal entity type. If there's one, it has to be mentioned on the topic conditions page. So always take a look at it, but in general, the answer was yes.
Thank you. The next one, synergies, very important because that's also underlined in the work program. So regarding synergies, is it viewed favorably in terms of evaluation if you secure letters of support by complementary projects? Agnes again, yes?
So the letters of support is not part of the application form. We make sure that each proposal is competing on an equal basis, and therefore we really make sure that no additional annexes can be added than the mandatory one. So no letter of support, please. It's really not evaluated, and there's no place for that, unless you want to use your Part B, but then you will not use your Part B in the most useful way.
Okay, thank you. The next question is on the JEP. Now, this morning there was already a long, informative session, also with many questions, but still there is a question here now, more on the practical side, I think. Should the JEP, so the Gender Equality Plan, be included in Part A or in the funding and tender registration under legal info for LEAR? Cécile, please.
First of all, at the application stage, the JEP question is only a self-declaration, so you tick a box whether the participants have a JEP or not. It's only once the proposal has been selected for funding that the LEAR has to provide more information, so there's a checklist that the LEAR has to check to assess whether there is a JEP in place. But the JEP must be in place by the time of the grant agreement signature.
Okay, I think that with this you also answered the next question, which is showed here. At what point must the JEP be signed in the submission or the signature? But you have just answered it, right? It should be signed before the signature. But anyway, as early as possible. And I would advise you, if you consider applying, I mean, try to work on this JEP and do not wait until the last minute. Then the next question that is shown here to me is, these are helpful to look at. I do not understand exactly what that means. Okay, is there a centralized space for new applicants where we can see outputs of finished previous relevant projects? Okay, yeah, that's very important to know. Cécile.
You would find this kind of information on Cordis. So for each topic, there would be a list of projects that have been funded. This is where you could find this information.
And if I can add, they are also on the funding and tenders portal. So for each topic, when the grants are signed, then you can go to the closed topics as well, and the signed grant agreements will be listed there.
Thank you. The next one, double funding. Is it considered double funding to have a partner in two consortia that are applying for funding for a same topic call? Agnes again, yeah?
Well, by default, it's not a double funding if a partner is in different projects or even in the same topic. But they have to make sure that they are not implementing the same action or they are not having the same results in two different projects. That would be obviously a double funding. So yes, normally they can participate in more projects, but they have to make sure that they are doing different actions, different tasks.
Thank you. The next question is on ethics, so we will pass that on then to our expert, Christina. What is the difference between an ethics mentor and an ethics advisor?
So in Horizon Europe jargon, an ethics mentor is a member of staff of one of the partner institutions who is experienced, knowledgeable on ethics. So he or she will will support the project, but as a member of the consortium. So there's no requirement of independence, and also there is no reporting requirement such for the ethics mentor, even though it's recommended that he or she keeps a record of their activities in the projects. Whereas an ethics advisor is usually added after the ethics evaluation I mentioned earlier. And there is a requirement of independence. So the advisor should be external to the consortium, have no conflict of interest, and be independent from the partner institutions, and has formal reporting obligations. So the reports of the ethics advisor become ethics deliverables that are then submitted to the REA. And there can also be an ethics board, and the choice between the advisor and board is usually made at the evaluation stage by the expert, ethics expert. And the board is usually chosen when the issues in the project are quite complex and diversified.
Thank you, Christina. Then it brings us to the next question. How can a single or independent research group join a consortium? Consortia are usually already established groups. Agnes, you mentioned in your presentation also the brokerage event and other types, so I think that question is for you.
Yes, so you can also join the brokerage event of tomorrow. The link is available on this event page as well. That's one of the possibilities. Of course, you can also contact your national contact points. Sometimes they support also the partner search in a national manner. And then the Funding and Tenders portal also offers different types of partner search facilities, especially linked to the topic. You can take a look at the partner search announcements, and then you will see who are interested in a given topic.
Thank you, Agnes. And I'm just waiting for the next one. Is a partner allowed to integrate more than one consortium and be part, therefore, of more than one proposal? We had already a question on double funding. This is also kind of linked to that. Cécile, would you like to answer this one? Yes?
So yes, absolutely. You can have a partner integrate more than one consortium. Just two things to bear in mind, as my colleague Agnes mentioned earlier. First of all, there should not be any double funding, which means that in these two proposals or projects, the partner should not be implementing the same action or producing the same results. Secondly, also you should ensure that the partner has the capacity to be part of two projects.
Thank you, Cécile. Then the next question, can we allocate a pool of funds to the associate partners if they have specific costs that they will need to have covered? I'm not sure I fully grasp it, but I believe my colleagues do. That's good. Agnes?
The question is about the associated partners. The definition of the associated partners is that they do not obtain EU funds. So this means even though they have costs, but they have to cover these costs themselves.
Okay, thank you. Is there an average mandatory duration of an action for a certain budget? What would be the maximum implementation time for a certain sum? Example given for the 2-3 million euro. Yeah, that's very often the average amount of budget. So here they are asking for the average mandatory duration. Agnes as well, yes?
Yes, so typically our projects are around, let's say, 3 years, but there are longer and shorter projects as well, depending on the structure of the work packages. So whether it's 2-3 million euros, it really depends on the action, on the implementing, what you are implementing in the project. So the average, I would say 3 years, but it can be more and less as well.
Indeed, indeed. The next question, please. Okay. What is the status of UK partners? Can a UK organization coordinate a proposal? I remember that we have also covered this morning, but we can repeat it easily. Cecilia?
Yes. So UK partners are allowed to apply for funding. They will be considered as associated countries when they apply. The only thing is that by the time of the signing of the grant agreement, there needs to be an association agreement in place for them to be considered full partners.
The next question, do coordination and support action projects proposal need to have universities as partners? And do they need to have research and science activities? So it's here about what we call the CSAs and the type of partners and also their type of activities. Agnes, yes?
So typically, coordination and support actions do not have research activities. So that's one of the corner points of this action type. Obviously, they can have universities still in the project because universities can also have additional training activities or dissemination activities or any other type of activities. But the coordination and support actions, whatever is described in the topic description, those are the activities that should be covered and typically not research activities.
I think we can, in the same flow, take immediately the next question, which is very much linked. What is the difference between the CSA, so you just explained it, and then a RIA grant? Yeah.
Well, besides the activities themselves, there's a big difference in the eligibility criteria. So while CSAs can be submitted only with one participant, even just the coordinator, the research and innovation actions have other eligibility requirements, at least 3 participants from 3 different countries, member states or associated countries. So that's one of the main differences, and obviously the research focus needs to be there in the research and innovation actions, research and innovation activities.
Thank you. The next question, yes. How can we have access to the list of interested participants? It's again a question that goes in the area what we had before, how to join a consortium or how to find other participants.
Yes, I would suggest that if you are interested in the other participants who might join a consortia, then you select your topic or even more topics, and under the topics you will see the partner search announcements. And if you click on view or edit, you will see a full list of all the advertisements, whether they offer or would request specific expertise in the consortium.
Okay, then we have another popular question regarding double funding again. So regarding double funding, what do you mean by implementing the same action? Is doing research in 2 projects doing the same action? So is it here more the question, what does it mean, action and projects? Cécile?
I think here there is a misunderstanding on action. I think we're talking about activities. So if you are involved in 2 proposals, just make sure that you're not providing the same service or involved in the same activities for both proposals. That would be considered as double funding.
Exactly. Thank you for clarifying this. And then our next question, yes. Okay, we go back to ethics issues. Christina, in your experience, what are the most common recurrent ethical issues identified under Cluster 2?
So As I mentioned earlier, what we see the most in terms of ethics issues applying are research with human participants, issues of personal data, data protection, research conducted in non-EU countries. Then what is within these issues a bit more sensitive, then it's very much dependent on the project and the context. Of course, for instance, undertaking research with minors or with vulnerable groups is definitely one of the points we see in many projects, and in such cases, you should try to show awareness that such activities are potentially sensitive and provide a justification for undertaking them. So within, of course, the scope of your research, but also explain what sort of safeguards and guarantees you're going to apply to your research. Another point we see quite often is the involvement of non-EU countries and perhaps conducting research in either countries in a state of either war or where there are unsafe conditions for both researchers and participants. So again, appropriate awareness and safeguards need to be shown at the application stage also. Conducting research in resource, let's say the resource-poor countries is also one issue we see quite often. And then, of course, the whole data protection legislation and how it applies, and the necessity of obtaining informed consent, both for participating in the research and for the processing of the personal data. And I think I did a bit the tour of the main ones.
Thank you. Yes, that was very good. We are coming to an end. I think we can still take one question, maybe two. Let's see. So, is a consortium allowed to include more than one partner from the same country? Cecilia.
Yes, you can. You can include partners from the same country. Just do bear in mind that you also meet the eligibility conditions when it comes to country representation.
Yes, indeed. I think that was a short question, so we could take next one. Is an organization currently funded by Creative Europe eligible to apply? I think Creative Europe is a program that was also mentioned this morning by the colleagues of DG EAC. So, yes, Agnes?
Yes, they are eligible to apply. Again, you need to look at the activities performed in the different projects to make sure that there's no double funding of the activities.
Okay. I would take now just the very last question, and then we're about to close. Are associated partners eligible to receive an EU contribution? How is the funding distributed in this case? Cecile, you used already the example of the UK. So maybe
yes, so associated partners cannot receive EU funding, so they can participate in the project, but with their own funds.
Okay, thank you. So that was it for this very intense session on tips and tricks to prepare your proposal at best. Thank you very much to my colleagues for the presentation and all the answers provided. Thank you for your interest and for all your interesting questions. You know, the questions we could not answer now, you will find them on the event page very soon. So from our side, we still want to wish you good luck with the preparation of your proposal. And I would like to ask you to stay with us a few more minutes for the closing session, which is about to start very soon. And will be done by our colleagues from DG Research. So thanks a lot and good luck.
How much time do we still have? Well, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. We have now come to our closing session of today, and I suggest that, Katja, if this is okay with you, that we do ladies first and you take the floor first, and then I will echo what you will be saying.
Thank you very much, Harald. And it's been a pleasure. It's been a very intense day, as Christine has noted, but thank you very much for your interest, for your questions, your engagement. Honestly, it's always great for us to see how much interest there is in the Horizon Europe calls. And I'm proud to say that Cluster 2 touches on many issues that are really fundamental for our citizens and for the future of Europe. So we hope that you now have all the information needed in your hands to put together a proposal, or maybe join the brokerage event tomorrow to be able to find good partners. Regarding the questions, it has been said many times, and I'm going to repeat it. If you did not get answers to all the questions, please fill in the question in the Research Inquiry Service. It's an online page on the Commission webpage, and we're happy to answer that within a couple of days. There's also the frequently asked questions on the Commission's website, so if somebody had already thought of the same question, you might already find an answer there. Most questions can also be answered by reading carefully the call texts, the general annexes, and by watching the recordings available on the Info Day page. So don't forget, the deadline to apply is the 14th of March, 17 hours Brussels time for most of the calls, and 21st of September for the Cultural Heritage Cloud call. So please submit the applications ahead of time to avoid any technology-related stress. And I pass on the floor with that to Harald and only wish you good luck for the proposals. Over to you, Harald.
Thank you very much, Katja. And as I've said, I'm going to echo what Katja has now said. And we know that in education, repetition is something very important. Therefore, I will recall one or the other point. Now, it has been a very demanding and very packed day today. In the morning session, we went through the horizontal questions. We had the questions and answers in setting out of Destination 1 on democracy, on Destination 2 on cultural heritage and the creative and cultural industries. And then in the beginning of the afternoon, we had a session on the call for the Cultural Heritage Cloud, followed by Destination 3, dealing with transformations and inclusion. And at the end, we had the tips and tricks for how to prepare a good proposal. I think with this, you have received all of the information you need for preparing a successful proposal. Please bear in mind, as Katja already mentioned, that on the website of the Info Day, you will find the recordings on the setting out of the individual topics of the destinations. We should also recall to you that it is very important when you prepare a proposal that you also read through the introduction of Cluster 2 and through the introduction of the different destinations, because they help to set the scene. And we also refer you to the website of the Info Day, and under events, you will find these recordings. Please do not forget that we've also got the EU funding and tenders portal. There under Horizon Europe and under Cluster 2, you will find information for this cluster. You will find information in the program guide on how to submit the different proposals, and you will also find the standard application form there. As far as the individual questions related to individual topics are concerned, also on this funding portal, if you go to the individual topics we have discussed today, you will also find a section on frequently asked questions, and there you can also find then answers. Now, just to give you an impression of the attendance today, we are very happy to report to you that at the opening we had some 1,000 persons listening and watching our videos. In the horizontal part, we had some 800 persons following this. In Destination 1, more than 600 persons, and in Destination 2, also more than 600 persons. So I think that this is a very good start, but what now needs to be done is to translate this interest into concrete project proposals. And therefore, I would like to recall to you, as Katja has already mentioned, that tomorrow we will have the brokerage event, and you will find on the InfoDays website under events the details on how to take part in this meeting tomorrow, and I can only invite you to take part in this. Now, to conclude, let me thank you very much for your attendance, for the many and very pertinent questions you have posed. I thank all my colleagues for their availability and for their help to answer these questions. And what is left to say is that we all wish you much luck and good success in preparing and submitting your proposals. Very many thanks and goodbye.